My guest today is a longtime friend of mine from Minnesota. 5 years ago, he started traveling the world by bike and since has ridden all over North and South America, Asia, and Eastern Europe. He's the host of the Where Is Karl YouTube channel and a guy I've shared many a beers with. I'm excited to welcome Karl Kroll.
Hey Adam, great to be here. Long time no see, buddy.
Dude, way too long. You
Yeah.
have a fierce beard right now, dude. It is
Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah, I guess it goes
The
with the job
lifestyle.
of biking around the world, yeah.
Let me just I'm gonna have to play with your levels a little bit sometimes, just because we're doing this on Zoom. But anybody watching this should be available on YouTube. So if you want to see how beautiful Carl is and see my smile too, I'm back home and we're getting going. But where are you now?
I'm in Minneapolis right now.
Oh,
Just
really?
yeah.
Are you seeing any of the homies?
A little bit, but not too much. I mean, pandemic's so weird, but when I can and then just staying busy here.
Yeah.
Uh
Have you?
Hoping for things to open up again soon.
Who have you hung out with?
Just Mayhan, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, I haven't seen him in like 10 years. When I was prepping for this, I started thinking about just some of the shit we did. Like, cause we went to high school together and, um, I, do you remember when Diamond tried to streak across the
Oh my God.
field?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such May Mayhan or Brian, is his real Christian name is. Just sent me a picture of the Mexico trip like an hour ago, and I was like, man, what a long time ago
Oh
that
yeah,
was.
I forgot about that. You guys were on the
I had two.
scooters and like,
Yeah.
yeah, wild, man.
18 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Um, so let's. I mean, we got a lot to cover. So I just so that people know, like we've known each other. I think for like 20 years actually, because we we used to play hockey together, and Johnny D was our coach. I think the same year, the year I started,
Sure.
I could
Yeah.
barely skate, and we stayed friends all throughout high school. And growing up, like you were always like an extremely just like free spirited guy. You were always doing something outside. You were always like boundary waters in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, hunting, fishing, camping. I mean, it was like you you could never keep Carl inside. And
Sure.
we did some of that stuff together, but like to my knowledge, your family has always sort of been that way, right? Like your dad's a big outdoorsman and like, you know, fishing, all that type of stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my family made it a priority to travel around ever since I was young. Like when I was really young, we did tent camping. Eventually got a little pop-up to tow behind or a little minivan.
Yeah.
And then I mean, when I was in middle school or something like that, they got an RV and we just drove all around the US and
I mean,
went
anybody who
fishing.
knows the Krolls, like you guys are all you're just such like a jovial family. Like your dad is awesome. I mean, he would come to hockey games and stuff, and your mom is awesome too. And like all you guys always have a smile on your face. And I mean, you were always down to try something, which was one of my favorite things about you. And one thing that like this is the part of the show where I just blow smoke up your ass. By the way, so just get
No, it
comfortable.
feels pretty good. I'm sure Papa and Mama Kroll are gonna like this too. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I told my mom that we were recording. She's like, "Oh, I gotta talk to his mom." Like, even my mom loves your mom. Like, it's like,
Oh, and my parents love your parents too. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like your
man.
parents are so great, like as well. Like those hockey tournaments and stuff.
Oh
Our
yeah,
parents just had a
it
blast.
was
Like
fun, man.
yeah,
And one thing, like, I think, you know, when you hear about somebody, we're gonna get into the details, but someone deciding to ride their bike across the world, essentially, like, it's that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. And like, you were one of the quietly smartest people that I know. Like you were, was it civil engineering at the U of M that you studied?
Uh, I mean, thank you very much, Adam. But I did mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So yeah.
I mean, that's not an easy thing to study at the University of Minnesota. And you had this balance. Like, I remember we were 18 years old, had a few beers this particular night, but like we started talking about the stock market, and like you were one of the first people that I had met in my life that knew a ton about the stock market. I was like, how the fuck, like, you're an interested person. Like, you
Mm.
work hard, play hard type mentality. And how did, like, what were you doing for work before you got into bike packing?
So like you said, I studied mechanical engineering, and then actually started out with a job where I was working abroad. So I worked in India, and then this was in I worked in India for a while. I worked in Montana, and then from that job, because I was working on site as like the site mechanical engineer, like the go-to technical guy, then I got into project management, and I eventually started doing project management, and then again was traveling quite a bit, working around the world. After a while, I thought maybe I didn't want to travel, and I got a job where I was based here in Minnesota. And then I realized, oh, what I really want to do is just travel
Yeah.
and not work. And I mean, at a certain point, like I realized, okay, I'm here in an office, and when I was a mechanical engineer working in the field, I had thought, man, if I could ever just be that guy in the office who's like telling me what to do, that'd be so great. Like he's he's the big boss, you know, he's bossing us around, and he doesn't have to actually go do the shit in the field.
Yeah.
Like, and then when I was a project manager, I was like, okay, well, I know from experience, like I'm not going to treat those guys like some project managers treated me. Had my job, I thought it was cool, but then after a while, I realized, okay, if I continue, where am I going to be? If I get my boss's job, will I be happy? If I get my boss's job, am I going to be happy? I was like, no, not really. Like it won't make me any happier.
Yeah.
But what could I do? Oh, I can go travel. And do I have everything I need to travel? Like, yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything. You know, I can go do it now.
Dude,
Um,
I gotta say this before you move on. Like, so I had my uncle Glenn on, and I guess he's not
I
really my uncle, but like,
That was a great episode, by the way.
appreciate
That
it,
was
man. Like,
awesome.
he's your type. Like, if there's ever an opportunity to get you two in a room together, like, you guys would love each other. But I have a cousin that lives in Colorado, like Durango, and he was talking about the same thing. Like, he's a huge split boarder, and like
Cool.
was working, I think, in analytics and stuff, and he just did the math out on like if I'm not the one that's calling the shots, and I like, what am I even doing all this work for? And he just dropped his job, and like it took like 2 years off, and I think he's back to work now. But I don't. There aren't that many people that kind of do the math on that. Like, they don't sit down and they're like, "Hey, where am I going with this? What actually makes me happy?" Like, and that's what I appreciate about what you did. Like, you realized what was important to you is being happy rather than making more money, you know?
Sure. And I mean, even like, here's the other thing. Like, even if biking around the world hadn't made me happy, I- it at least I would have done it, and I wouldn't have this thought in the back of my mind, like, oh man, I wish when I was younger I would have gone out and done something adventurous like that. You know, it's like going and doing it, and then you can realize, okay, is it for me, or should I go back into the corporate world?
Have you had a
And
lot of moments of like doubt once you've started? Like, you're like, "Oh man, I could have." Like I'm on this road in the middle of like Kazakhstan, and
yeah,
like I could just be
uh,
going home to a girlfriend in a nice condo, and because that's a comfortable life to leave.
No, and it totally is. And that's one thing. Like you do give up a lot to just go and travel by bike and take, I mean, a year out of normal life or more. And yeah, I definitely have that thought where it's like, oh, I see friends starting families and stuff like that. It's like, oh, yeah, not getting any younger. Like
Yeah.
I want to have a family someday.
Do you? Because I
Like,
don't.
I mean, I think I do. Half the time I think I do, half the time I don't. But
Hey,
it's
stay
like,
on the team of people that don't with me, because it
yeah,
stays less lonely.
it's getting smaller and
It
smaller every
is,
day.
dude. And then you
Yeah.
start seeing some of our friends that are having kids, and you're like, oh man, that person shouldn't be having a
Oh
kid.
no, Joe. Yeah, or those kids are gonna be messed up.
Oh my God. Oh.
Uh,
So like when you what was your initial goal with this? Because you sent me some notes, and you had sort of you did some like skateboarding stuff down from Duluth to Minnesota, but like what was the inspiration? Like what was the moment where you're like, okay, I'm gonna start bike packing?
so I actually, when I quit my job, I actually moved to Warsaw, Poland, because working in Warsaw, Poland, I had met a girl there and just stayed in touch with her, just friends, and then we traveled together, and then I ended up saying, okay, what the heck, I can move to Poland and like
I'm
try
at
living.
while you're I'm bringing up a Google map because I gotta like I was
Okay.
looking at some of the like places that you went to. I was like, oh my, he rode from like anybody listening. I recommend just having Google Maps open to get the idea of scale of how far you've ridden, because it's wild, dude. So you're in
Yeah.
Warsaw,
I,
Poland with this girl.
so I moved to Warsaw, Poland, and when I moved there, at the time I had been, I think, watching some YouTube videos of people traveling by bike and just getting really inspired by it. And I knew I wanted to do it for a while. So actually, her and I went to Myanmar in probably like 2015 together, just after, like, it wasn't that long after Myanmar had opened for travel. And we were backpacking, and I thought that was really cutting edge at the time. Like, oh, we're backpacking in this country that just opened for international travel. And this is before they had the whole crisis they're having now. Uh, and then I saw a Polish family who was traveling by bike there, and my mind was just blown. I was like, what? Like, these guys are not only in this country, which is kind of a cool place to be right now, but they're biking through it. And so just like little seeds getting placed, like seeing a family and realizing, okay, that's possible. Real people do it. And then watching some YouTube channels, getting inspiration. By the time I moved to Warsaw, Poland, I had picked Warsaw, Poland on a map, and I saw Istanbul, which is kind of a cool, cool place because it's the kind of where East meets West, and decided to bike from Warsaw to Istanbul and bike through the Balkans. So, yeah.
So you went from Warsaw. You went to what was the path you took? It was to Hungary.
So I actually went from Warsaw, then I went into a corner of into Ukraine, and then Romania, just went into Hungary for a little bit, then Serbia, then Bosnia, just a tiny bit in Bosnia too, then back into Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, now North Macedonia, as it's called now, and Bulgaria, and then into Turkey for a little bit, all the way to Istanbul. And
How does it work with like passports and stuff?
in the Balkans, it's pretty easy. But actually, that was an interesting trip because for some diplomatic reason, I think we harbored somebody who was involved in a military coup attempt in Turkey. Like, I think we still have him in the US. Turkey had actually stopped allowing U.S. visitors for a little bit. And it was while I was on that tour. So there was actually some thought like, oh, maybe I won't get into Turkey. But by the time I got to Turkey, things were good, and the border guards even gave me water and maybe even offered me food and stuff. I mean, Turkey's an amazing country. But
But did you need like any special visas or anything like that? Or you were just staying for a short period of time?
yeah, I didn't for any none of those countries require a visa for a U.S. passport holder. I also had a temporary residency permit for Poland, so I had like or not a driver's license, but an ID card from Poland, which I'm sure didn't hurt. But there aren't any visa requirements in those countries for shorter stays.
And did you know any of the language in any of these places?
I was learning Polish at the time, so a lot of the languages in the Balkan in the Balkan or what is it? Serbo-Croatian is the language family is like very slightly related to Polish and other Slavic languages. So there was a tiny bit of communication I could do. But yeah, I mean, if you go to Hungary, like good luck, dude. And I mean, Romania, the same. Bulgaria, I couldn't get Bulgarian at all. Albanian,
So
no
how are
chance.
you
Like,
well, I guess you're tenting, right? Like so what's your primary interaction with people in those countries? Is it just to get food and stuff or
a lot of the times on that trip, I probably stayed in more hostels than I would ever now.
yeah.
But even that, I wasn't staying in hostels very often. It was probably every every 4 or 5 days staying in a hostel. And a lot of interactions with people are maybe like nowadays, like asking for a place to stay or like a recommendation for where I can place my tent, possibly asking for water. I mean, all going into little stores, all sorts of things. Like people, when they see you on a bicycle, like one of the beautiful things about bicycle travel is when somebody sees you on a bicycle and you're obviously not from around there, they are super curious about what you're doing. So
Yeah.
people are coming up and asking questions all the time.
Yeah.
And
One thing I would say anybody who is listening or watching, Karl has just a crazy number of like really cool videos on your YouTube channel, which is Where is Karl? And you can
no,
see, oh, go ahead.
it's Karl Kroll
Karl Kroll,
on
okay.
YouTube. Yep. Yeah.
And it's the I watch dude so many of these where you're breaking down like what you do carry, what you don't carry, your setup, like different things that have happened to you, different places and that you've been, and it is like eye catching, you know, like it makes sense why people would see it and be like, what's going on here?
Oh, totally.
How
Yeah.
much
And
or how much does the bike weigh, like with everything loaded?
it's varied a lot on my trips as I get different gear, get better. I mean, it also varies a lot depending on how much water I have to carry
Yeah,
because if you're going to like cross the Atacama Desert, like you need to carry a ton of water. Like 12, like I was carrying 12, 13 liters of water. So that alone is a ton of weight. Uh, but I recently did the Great Divide mountain bike route across the United States, and I
that's
want to.
so that's from the tip of South America up to Alaska.
No, okay, so the Great Divide mountain bike route is a off-road route that goes from. It actually there's a small section in Canada, but I wasn't able to do that in 2020 because of obvious reasons with the border being closed.
Yeah,
But so I biked from the border of Canada to the border of Canada and Montana to the border of New Mexico and Mexico, and on mostly gravel roads. And for that route, more on that route. That route's one of the most famous off-road biking routes, and it's been around for about 20 years. So that kind of created the sport of bikepacking, which is off-road bicycle touring. Because it's one thing to bicycle tour on paved roads all the time, but it's a whole nother ball game when you're going on really small dirt roads, sometimes single track, that sort of thing. Or places where there aren't roads, people bike pack with fat tire bikes all over the place. So
do you prefer one over the other?
I really prefer off-road.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because it's more interesting or what?
It's more interesting. You see more beautiful things. When you're going into towns, like oftentimes you're going into these little tiny towns in the middle of nowhere, and it's so cool because people aren't seeing people traveling. You're off the tourist path. So lots of these countries are off the tourist path, but when you travel on the little dirt roads, you're meeting people who just don't see anybody, And they're really interested, because if somebody sees tourists every single day, they're not going to be as excited when they see a white guy, come into their town. But if the last one they saw was 2 years ago traveling by bike, and they were a really nice guy, and then they see you, they're going to want to come up and meet you.
That's crazy. How do you pick a trip? Like what are you looking for? Like, are there specific things in terms of like the next things you want to do, or is it just I want to ride across the entire world?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways I picked my trips. So for Warsaw to Istanbul, it was I'm living in Warsaw. I want to leave my front door and get to Istanbul. And that's for me, that's really intriguing. And then I did a trip in Norway, and I flew. It started in a town called Tromsø in northern Norway, and I biked to this town. My whole goal was to bike to this town called Hammerfest, just because the name of the town, I had seen it on a map like a couple years before, and I thought, man, I have to go check out Hammerfest and see what's up there. And while I was up there, I met other people from Europe who were cycling, and they're saying, no, you have to go to this place called Nordkapp, and it's the most northern point in Norway, and it wasn't far from Hammerfest. So I was just biking up there to go to this town called Hammerfest, So there are all sorts of reasons. Some places, the country really intrigues me. When I went to Istanbul, I did that trip. I was really intrigued by Georgia, the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a train across Turkey from Istanbul and then I biked a little bit more in Turkey and then into Georgia, just around Georgia, because I really wanted to go check out the mountains in Georgia. And then biking in South America, I hadn't spent enough time.
I'm following along with the map, because it's like, this is so cool to like hear you the scale of all the different things, dude. It's nuts. Like to be looking at a map and see like you going from Warsaw to Istanbul. It's like you just scrolling across. Dude, how are you navigating that stuff? Is it just your phone?
Yeah. Just not using Google Maps, using offline map applications.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just with using offline maps.
And are you do you listen to podcasts and stuff while you ride, or what do you do?
It really depends. I always say my best days are when I don't listen to anything. I'm just in my own mind, let's say on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, just checking it out and kind of in my own head. Like, that is my favorite day. But a lot of the time, like if I'm on a paved road, I put on headphones, podcasts. Recently got into audiobooks with Libby. Like, shout out to Libby. Libby's awesome.
Yeah, dude,
And
audiobooks are solid.
they're so good. And then just music sometimes too, but a lot of podcasts and audiobooks.
From like a practical standpoint, and I want to get back to like the choosing of trips, but like how many miles are you riding a day?
With that, it just varies hugely. Like, because if you're on a paved road, you're going to just crush miles.
Hmm.
And if you're on a paved road going out of the Andes, like one day I left the Andes Mountains in outside of Lima, and it's just a straight shot down to Lima, which is on the Lima in Peru, which is on the coast. And so I came out of the Andes Mountains after a day of biking, and then hit this paved road and just blasted down to the coast as fast as cars went. So that's not a typical day, but I probably did well over 100 miles. Just cruising.
Yeah.
But my hardest days are days where I only go 20 miles and it's just slogging in sand or something like that, just pushing my bike. So it really varies. On a typical nice gravel road, it's from anywhere from 60 to 80 miles, I would say.
A
And that's in
day?
the yeah.
That's
You get
so. Yeah, I got a lot of questions about that. Like, do you
okay.
do you wear like a fitness tracker at all?
I use Strava quite a bit,
So
but I
how
don't
many
use it when
calories
I'm
are you burning a day?
a ton. Yeah,
Like,
like
it's it.
thousands. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I mean, to be doing that, what 6 days a week that you ride, or how many days a week are you on?
I ride most days, and I do take rest days. I even sometimes if I get to a cool place, I'll go hiking, or if I meet somebody cool, I'll stay for a couple days in a town, but or even a week at a time.
So are you
But
just eating like
normally
crazy though?
you eat as much as you can, yeah. Like,
That's
and and you still lose weight. Like,
yeah,
you can get really, really skinny, and it kind of depends on the country how fatty the food is.
yeah.
But I just eat all the time, yeah. It's it's ridiculous in that, and it takes a while when you stop touring to like try to teach your body that you don't just have to eat and eat and eat. Like it's hard, like,
Yeah.
because your body's just still in this mindset like starvation. Like you just need to eat. And
Well,
yeah,
it's
it's
Glenn who I was talking about earlier. He had just like the weirdest eating habits because like when you're living off of just like moose, he needs all the fat from the moose and you know just he eats like one big meal a day and it's totally different than like a Western diet. But do you? I I watched some of the videos. Like, how much food are you carrying with you, and like, how do you manage the food?
it and again it really depends on where I'm biking, because if I'm going to bike and reach a town every single day, I might just carry 1 or 2 days of food, or one day of food. There's no reason to carry too much food.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to carry food for 4 days, or like up to five. I think is the most I've had to do. But it's
Have you ever run out?
I have, yeah, yeah.
What'd you do?
uh, oh man, I ran out in Tierra del Fuego in South America, and there's this stuff called dulce de leche. I don't like maybe you've had cookies with dulce de leche. It's a kind of like a sugar syrup spread.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ran out of food, and all I had was this dulce de leche sugar syrup. And so here I am, just kind of miserable, just eating dulce de leche. Like And that night I actually camped near a stream and I went fishing and I caught some fish, which was just awesome.
Yeah,
But
those Minnesota skills came
yeah,
in
exactly.
clutch right there.
Yeah. So I guess I've never run totally out of food. I mean, once you start getting low, you're gonna ration. You're not just gonna inhale it all.
Yeah,
But I know other times, like it just gets down to eating weird stuff, like maybe just having a piece of bread with mayonnaise on it, or just eating mayonnaise, something like that.
yeah, that's crazy. Do you like? How do you navigate like injuries or sickness?
Uh, so luckily, you know, I was in South America for 14 months, and I only got sick, I think twice in the time I was there. Like I think I have a pretty strong stomach, but uh, and one time I was actually traveling by car because I got to La Paz in Bolivia, and my dad came and visited, Senior Kroll, and I was there with a friend who I'd been biking with and my dad, and we were traveling around, and I must have just ate something bad, and I was out for a day. And the second time I was in Ecuador, and I'd just come off of like a fairly remote section, and I normally wild camp, which means not paying for camping or something like that. But for some reason, who knows what, I went to a hostel, and instead of actually staying in a room, I just was camping in their lawn. And that night, I was just vomiting outside of my tent, like just terribly. So I just spent the next day like I don't know, hanging out. Actually, the owner of that place, people are so nice like in Ecuador and in many foreign countries. Like, actually took me to a doctor to figure out what was wrong, and
That's
I
got to
don't
be
think I
one of those
got.
moments though where you're like the mechanical engineering job was not that bad, you know, like
Yeah.
it.
Oh no. Like getting rain. I think it was raining. Like raining, sitting in a tent, just like trying to be comfortable. Like at least I had a toilet to go to, like nearby, but
Hmm. I didn't even
it
think
was
about
nice,
that.
very nice to be in a town. I was lucky. Like in the middle of nowhere like that, it would have really sucked.
Do you have
But
to squat most of the time when you're
when you're in the woods,
yeah,
or
like when you're riding like
wait, when
Oh, I thought you were pausing for dramatic effect there.
no,
Uh,
no, like are the toilets squat toilets
or
or
like when
like am I?
you're just like I hadn't thought about the restroom situation, but
Oh
like
yeah.
when you're out bikepacking, are you squatting most of the time?
Oh, I'm pooping all around the world, man. Yeah, it's I mean, like you're not doing it in a city,
Yeah.
but I mean, you're really remote most of the time, so it's like backcountry camping, and just go find a rock, flip it up, or dig a little hole, and then yeah, find a nice spot. I mean, I prefer that than to most toilets. It's
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I
carry a
went to
little.
China, like you sort of get conditioned after a little while of doing that. You're like, why wouldn't we all do this? Like it's but I wish they had had toilet paper. That's the one part
Uh,
that's like it's just weird to
and
it
the
varies like crazy, yeah.
it varies from culture to culture. It's so strange. Like even in South America, I want to say in Chile and Argentina, you're going to find toilet paper in bathrooms. And then once you get to like Peru, it's like the mentality is no, if we have toilet paper in the bathrooms, somebody's going to steal it. So instead, everybody has to carry toilet paper on them all day long.
Dude,
It's
that's how it
so
was in
strange.
China. And
Yeah.
I drank like a bottle of red wine. It was like a study abroad trip and you know, you do whatever you have to do during the day so you can like go have fun at night. And we just the only thing we could buy that was like reasonably priced was red wine. So I drank like a bottle and a half of wine the night before, and then I wake up. We're at Tiananmen Square, and I'm like, oh my god, like it just hit. and you're sitting there, you're like, I don't have any toilet paper on me, like somebody like you always had to use the girl that's on the trip that's like over prepared for that.
Sure. Uh,
So
yeah,
funny.
it's not a good situation to be in.
No, it's not, man.
Yeah.
So when you're riding, like, have you had any issues like self-defense type situations, whether it's animals or other people, or like, and do you carry anything to protect yourself? Glock
Uh,
9.
yeah, all the time. Just smuggle it through the borders.
Yeah.
Uh, when I rode across the Great Divide in the United States, that's riding along the Rocky Mountains across the Continental Divide, which is why it has its name, the Great Divide.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're in bear country most of the time. So I actually carried bear spray there. In the biggest danger for a touring cyclist, well, two biggest dangers I would say are cars and dogs. So
Dogs.
dogs, yeah, in foreign country, like it's not so bad in the US, but lots of dogs I think are bred for protection, and that mentality of the dogs is less pet than defense, and that still is the case in a lot of places. So dogs, when they see a bicyclist, well, I mean, go up and basically attack you.
Damn.
And
Have you
yeah,
had
and
them go at you?
definitely everybody who has traveled by bike has had dogs go at them. And it really, again, it's really weird. It's kind of like the toilet paper situation, where it's a cultural thing, like how aggressive the dogs are. You can cross a border, like from Peru to Ecuador. Like the dog situation just gets vastly better in Ecuador, but in Peru, you'll have some really aggressive dogs.
Dude, this
And
in no way would I have expected this to come up at all. Like, are these stray dogs, like dogs like on the dirt path, or are these like in communities and stuff?
it really varies, again, from country to country, but in Peru, it's a lot of stray dogs. And maybe some of them have owners, but the owners are nowhere near. And so like even a group of dogs will come up and attack you, and or like yeah, get really really close, and people get bit. So it's not like they won't, they're just pretending. They will bite you. So
What do you
lots of the
do?
I carry rocks lots of the times. And so yeah, it's like
I thought
it's
you were gonna
sometimes
say
it's
use your bear spray, but like you carry rocks.
I didn't have bear spray in South America. So I carried rocks for most of South America, and that's pretty good defense. I mean, in lots of places you don't have to worry about the dogs, but Peru is really bad, for example, and like it's sometimes ends up being like a rock throwing battle, and like or if a dog's coming up and you like hit them, then sometimes they'll move off, sometimes they won't.
So how do they
Uh,
just like follow you, or like how does this situation usually play out? Because I'm having trouble like visualizing the
so
scenario.
if
This
you're
is
going
so
down,
weird too. Like I never would have expected that like like
yeah,
dogs
yeah,
were, and it's funny because they're, as I talk to more people, like dogs, people always have that connotation of it being a pet, but like I've heard other people from different cultures and stuff kind of talk about dogs in a really negative way, like a nuisance, or non, it's not scruffy, like,
sure, yeah. And I mean, you and I love dogs, like
yeah.
I love dogs, but after getting attacked by your third pack of dogs in a day, like you are not going to have the same feelings towards dogs. Like it's different, but
what are they
and
what are they trying to do?
I think it's okay. You're seeing this thing, a bicycle, person on a bicycle. Maybe they're not super used to that, and so it's like it's maybe something a little bit strange, And then, I don't know, maybe, yeah, who knows? Because I don't know exactly. Like, there's definitely places, like, the second worst place, or maybe the worst place for dogs that I've been is actually in Eastern Anatolia, Turkey, and in Georgia. And there the dogs are bred for shepherding. And they're these giant shepherd dogs with lots of hair, like, totally different from the Peruvian dogs. And there it's very clear that, okay, they're bred for defense, and that's all they know to do. They just see you as something foreign, and they're going to defend whatever against you.
Dude, I
And so,
of all the things that we were going to talk about today, I
yeah.
never would have guessed that the conversation of you being attacked by dogs was going to come out. It's just so crazy. Like, so, I mean, you obviously have to have stuff for like self-defense then, but like, how are you tape yourself, you put out like really good content, but like, how are you deciding what you should and shouldn't carry on the bike?
So with gear, it's, I mean, basically the bare minimal essentials of gear. I mean, I carry a fishing rod, but I'm not carrying very much extra fishing stuff. Like, that's kind of my toy. Like, is my fishing pole. Like, if I happen to camp near a lake or a stream, I can go fishing. And then, it's not very much. It's minimal camping gear, like a stove, cooking gear, so you can eat.
Yeah, and
And
anyone
then,
watching, like I said, like you put out a great video of you breaking down like how you pack up all this stuff, and but are you like when you started, what did you start carrying and have like decided I don't need versus like now you've been riding for a while and what have you added?
sure. Ah, yeah. Let me think. Like, I actually did a pretty decent job when I started of not carrying like an incredible amount of extra gear. I mean, if anything, I carried an extra pair of shoes because I'm riding in clipless shoes, which are actually shoes with clips. Like, it's a misnomer, but so I'm riding with cycling shoes, which aren't the greatest for walking around. So I used to carry a spare set of tennis shoes. I stopped doing that
So you walk around in bike shoes all the time?
all the time. Yeah, they're mountain bike shoes, so they're not as bad as typical, like, carbon fiber cycling shoes. But so there's that. I probably have reduced the number of clothing items. Like, I probably used to carry like a nice shirt and like a t-shirt and something else, and now my nice shirt can double as a shirt for biking. I probably have two t-shirts.
Do you carry a
And
razor?
I did for a while, and then I
It doesn't
was like,
look
well, this is
like
pointless. uh, yeah, so I used to carry a razor, but then this beard happened. Yeah, I can't think of too much. Oh, I used to carry a lock,
Oh
like
yeah, I saw that in your video. So you
a
don't carry a bike
larger.
lock anymore?
Well, what I carry is just a tiny little lock with a wire. Just barely anything. You wouldn't consider it a lock in any city. You'd never use it around here in Minneapolis, for
Mm-hmm.
example. But what I find is that it gives me peace of mind when I'm camping. It's a wire that, okay, for the listeners, like, this wire, you could probably cut through it with a strong scissor. It's just not that thick. But my whole mentality is that, okay, if somebody's going to try to grab my bike, I just have it attached with this wire, so it's kind of hard to see. And so if somebody was pulling on my bike away from my tent, I would feel it, and then I could get up and confront them.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, that has never happened.
Yeah, it's good you carry those rocks though too, you know.
Those rocks, yeah. I and on that. I did actually get pepper spray at some point, just a really small canister of pepper spray.
Mm-hmm.
And if other cycling tourists are out there listening, like that is the best thing against dogs because you can just give them a little tap because they come right up to you and they're a foot away. All you have to do is give them a little tap of pepper spray right directly in the eyes, and all except for one dog that I've encountered, like that's been enough to make them stop. But
Just
and you don't have to use it very much. Like that single little canister of pepper spray lasted me like a couple months, and then I guess I didn't need it anymore once I got to Colombia because nicer dogs.
that's
It's weird.
crazy. So how many countries have you ridden through now? Is it 26 or has that number gone up?
No, it's 26. Yeah.
And
So
what's the ultimate goal? Like, is there one, or you just riding the wave?
you know, I guess the ultimate goal. That's a good question. So when I started out from the southern tip of Argentina, Ushuaia, like my goal was to bike from there to the northernmost point in Alaska, Prudhoe Bay, or the northernmost point you can drive to. And so I still have the goal of finishing up that trip, and I really want to this summer if Canada's willing to let us in, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's my short-term goal with this. If if for some reason that doesn't work out, at least I biked across South America, and I mean I don't know, I've been pretty bummed out about like not finishing that trip, and so
Yeah,
I've
I'm
had
sure.
to tell myself, oh, like you did, like I did something,
I think
and
most people would say that's pretty far on a bike, Carl. Like
I, no,
it's a
I mean,
good ride. Like I know
right,
like it sucks to, but I mean most people that would be like a lifetime achievement, you know?
yeah, no, and well, but it's one thing when you have it like on your mind all the time, like, okay, I'm going up there, and I mean, pandemic's been hard on everybody, so I'm not claiming that like, oh, just because I'm not able to do my trip, like it's hurt me extra,
Hmm.
it's just it's just one of the things that you can't control. But
Where does the motivation come from though? Because for like it seems like it's this intrinsic thing that you have where you you want to do it for yourself to prove it to yourself that you can do it, but is it not that, or like because that motivation, it's like so it's all personal, like nobody else is saying like, hey Carl, you need to go ride your bike from South America to the tip of Alaska. I mean, it's a very intense thing too to have a goal of that nature.
I mean, it's a little bit strange, isn't it? But
I mean, as somebody
uh,
that like is sort of wired that way too, I get it, but like,
yeah.
can you articulate where that comes from, or like what's driving you to do that?
I guess like a huge thing is I really enjoy travel and and adventure too. But I really do enjoy travel and experiencing different cultures. And when you travel by bike, you don't have an option whether or not you're going to have interactions with local people all the time. And so for me, a part of it is just to learn like these different cultures and different countries, like on a really what feels like a really personal level that I haven't received from backpacking or traveling by car. It's
Is it
seen
because you're
everything.
just so fully vested, like you don't have any alternate, like you just have to be in that moment and make? I mean, if you're not the one that's making the most of it, you're kind of screwed. Like you're just gonna be in that tent.
Right. Oh, and I mean, a big thing is like when you're in a car and you're going from point A to B, like you everything else goes by quickly. Like it's just a blur, you know? But when you're on a bicycle, you don't have an option whether or not you get to see and experience those places. And it's really special to like go to some of these little places and I mean not be forced, but like you're there and you have to enjoy it. Like somehow you have to find food and water and find a place to stay, so you're going to interact with people. So I mean that for me is a big driving factor. Like, and you were asking about like future goals. Like I I've just barely been in Africa. Like for me, it'd be really, really cool to go bike tour in Africa and just go to a place where I haven't spent, I haven't spent any time and experience it on this really like low level from a bicycle traveling at 10 miles an hour. So,
How much does it cost to live this lifestyle? Like, is it pretty affordable, or is it like
yeah.
what? Like, if somebody's interested in getting into bike packing, how much money do you need to live comfortably doing this?
Well, everybody's idea of comfort is a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
and like it took me a couple of trips like to get to the point where I am now, where I blatantly don't want to stay in a hotel or in a hostel. You know, I'd rather camp. And then there's a cool. Well, I should get into we should talk about that later. But there's people who will host cyclists all around the world, so you can actually go stay with people, with locals, for free, and then you get to interact with them. And I don't know, they normally show you around, or you play games together, have a couple of beers, you know, share a meal, like that sort of thing. So that's a whole different thing. But traveling by bicycle is like the cheapest way you could ever travel. Like
Yeah.
it is dirt cheap.
Is it just food? Is all you're paying for?
Food, every once in a while, parts for your bicycle.
So, like,
Yeah.
realistically, how much does somebody need to live this lifestyle a year? Like, what would you, if you had to say, like, over, under a certain amount of money, what would it be around?
I I would say, well, so Ecuador is one of the most expensive countries in South America, and I even went to the Galapagos while I was there, like took a flight, and so I was really worried about it breaking the bank. And when I looked at my bank account, because I try not to pay like stress too much about finances, but when I looked at my bank account, I'd spent under $15 a day. So like the entire time I was in Ecuador,
And
which was
how are you funding most of your stuff, though? Is it Patreon, or, like, what?
you know I launched Patreon pretty late into my trip, and then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I could have financed when Patreon, like right when I launched it, I could have financed 2/3 of my travel just with Patreon.
So if
And
I had
then
anybody that was listening, like, you know what, I want to make this guy's trip to Africa happen.
yeah,
How can they support you? Where can they support you at?
sure. I mean, my Patreon is just Karl Kroll, and you can find links in my Instagram, which is where underscore is Carl, and then or you can find links on YouTube, which is Karl Kroll too. So
Yeah, I'll make sure to
yeah,
have Henry throw that in the show notes too, because I mean, if it's $15 a day, dude, we can make you. Let's get you to Africa, and then we can do a follow up episode. Because I'm
hell
sure
yeah,
people are gonna be stoked on this, and
sweet.
it
Yeah, we could do an interview from Africa. That'd be
that'd be
sick.
awesome, dude. Just as long as there aren't any crazy dogs there. Um,
Yeah.
I want to get into the story section a little bit of the pod, but one last question. I mean, you talked a lot about like this theme of meeting people and being totally like vested into the travel experience is really important to you. Like, what have you, what would you say you've learned most about yourself through this process?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess a thing I've really learned, like, or that's been hard for me that I've learned about myself, especially with bike travel, like, is that it's really easy to get into the mindset when you're doing some big trip like this of like just focusing on that end goal. Like, okay, I need to get here at the end of the day, and like, yeah, just like putting putting too much stress on like the end objective. Whereas like what I what I realized what I really need to do to like get the full experience of this trip is like to slow down sometimes, or like I don't know, maybe sacrifice like some end objectives in order to see some weird thing here or experience this weird thing there. And really been trying to push myself to do things like that. Like I was in New Mexico towards the end of my tour in the US, and this guy saw me, he invited me for lunch, and they were stuccoing this old like 200-year-old church. And like sure, at the beginning of the day I had a goal like to get to a certain point, and after having lunch with them I was like, well, like how often are you gonna get this chance to like just go stucco a 200-year-old church, like, and help out a tiny bit. Like I didn't even help out that very much at all. You know, it probably caused more damage than I did good. But like just like that mindset, like it's like okay, like I have to like live in the moment and experience things rather than like just rushing through life too quickly, you know? And it even for me, like a guy who's biking around the world, like it's still hard to do that. Like
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
because you're just
Yeah.
fully present. Like you're not
Yeah.
thinking about what you're doing, or like what you got to do versus what you did, and it's our whole culture is built around like what you need to be doing, and I like that a lot, man. That's at times when I'm podcasting, I just feel like when you're really in a podcast, it's like in this kind of, I don't know, you're in this little time capsule, and you lose sense of how long things are going, and just you're not worried about anything else, and it's awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
super fun.
And then can I say one more thing about like what the biggest thing I've learned like about the world?
Sure.
Because sure. Okay. I mean because the biggest thing like my takeaway from doing these trips is just like the goodness of humanity. Like it's super incredible. And like you go to these places where people barely have anything, and they're just willing to like they're willing to do anything for you. You know, they're just super, super hospitable. And like a lot of these cultures are super open. And like, you know, at least what I feel like coming back to the US, it was a huge culture shock. Is like we're missing a ton of that in the US. It does exist here. It exists a lot more than is apparent. Like
You just
just
don't
at
see
first
it on
glance.
CNN and Fox News, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I mean, that's not the stuff you see in the news, but I mean, people are genuinely good, you know? And at the beginning of this pandemic, I was like, there was all these forecasts like the world is ending, like everybody's going to be killing each other. Who knows, you know, all the predictions, but from bike travel, it's like, you know, people are normally good. You know, people get forced to do bad things, and there are bad people out there, but overall, people are normally like genuinely good. You know, so just that's a huge takeaway. And
That's funny because I know a few people that travel a lot, and they've actually said almost the same thing as like going to different cultures. They realize how much of kind of a bubble all of this is in the U.S. and like media marketing, people selling you on stuff, and it's like, it's just not, it's a fictionalized narrative. Because when you meet people in real life, most people aren't like that. But for whatever social media and the internet and all this stuff has created that. But
Well, and it's so strange. Like, so I'm biking through South America, and people are just worried, and oh, you're gonna die. Like, I'll get, I'll get comments on YouTube like, you are, you're lucky you didn't die, or you are going to die. It's like, oh, thank you for that useful input. Like, no, like, sure, I could die, but the most likely way I'm going to die is by getting hit by a car.
and that's coming from some guy that's literally sitting on his couch, like, just like on an impulse typing that comment. It's, I mean, you're the one that's there experiencing it, but he knows a lot better than you, because from his point of view on the couch, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and he saw something on the news like Colombia is extremely dangerous. But the thing is, or like Ukraine. When I was in Ukraine, there was a war going on in eastern Ukraine. And it's like, but if you don't bike to that exact spot, everything is nice, like, and people are super nice. And like, that's not to say that the war going on isn't newsworthy or isn't important, but like, what happened? There's not a war in all of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same with people abroad, like getting news about the U.S. And it's, I mean, COVID was very bad, but like, people from outside of the U.S. are thinking that there's just dead bodies in the streets and all this. Like, it happens everywhere. Like, people, the news just needs to, I guess, emphasize things to get clicks. But,
Yeah, but that's why we got to keep putting out content, buddy, because we're putting out real stuff. And I don't know if you saw this week, but we had the last guy come on. He accidentally dropped a leak about the new Halo video game, and it went like on the news. So if you do have any leaks like that, please feel free to share. But go ahead.
Pull an Elon and smoke some weed on the show.
Exactly. All right, so I gotta play this story time music. My producer he's like getting upset because I'm not playing it enough. It's kind of long, so just give me like 30 seconds here.
Everybody sit down, please. Everybody sit down, quiet, please. Everybody sit down, listen carefully. Everybody sit down, please. It's story time, it's story time.
I blame the producer on that, but you got.
I thought it was nice.
Yeah, this makes you want to go take a nap.
Yeah.
So you got. I want to be respectful of your time here, so we're at like an hour and 5 in. So do you got a decent travel story? And then I got a good Karl Kroll story of my own actually to share.
Oh, no, man. Yeah. So do you want a story about like danger, or do you want a story about like just the goodness or like a really good experience? Like
danger.
Danger?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Buddy and I were biking in Kyrgyzstan, and we were cycling on this really little, like, just a horse trail, or like basically just a goat trail. And so like lots of pushing our bikes, and end up going up this ridge, setting up camp, and I think he went to go gather some water because we were up on a ridge and he had to go a ways. I think I just went to a ridge and took some really nice pictures and stuff like that. But then we went back to camp. There's no wood around that area because it's just a steppe. So we made a fire, just burning cow shit, and cooked our food. And then a little bit later, we hear some guys coming down the mountain. And they come, eventually getting really, really close to us. And we're like, oh, like what's going on? Why are these guys coming here? That we were off the trail. They shouldn't be coming to our campsite. And it ended up being these two guys Kyrgyz guys on horseback, just absolutely hammered. And what they drink there is kumis, so it's horse milk, so fermented horse milk. And so these guys just smell like this horse milk, and they're coming to our campsite to like see if we have anything to drink or cigarettes or anything. And don't like. Like I said, I learned some Polish and learned a little bit of Russian too, and so but an incredibly limited amount of Russian. So trying to communicate with these guys, like, no, we don't have anything for you. And this whole time, they're both on horseback. They're right almost on top of our tent, and then our bicycles are right there too. So just trying to keep their horses were swaying, just like a drunken person would sway. Like they're on their horse, so they're kind of steering it back and forth and almost stepping on our tent, like our bicycles, and just like ruining like our gear in the middle of nowhere. And like trying to like kind of push the horse, but you're not going to push a horse, so you just don't want to get injured. And eventually, like after way too long, like I'm just trying to get these guys away from us, like eventually pushed them off, and they went who knows where. I have no idea how they were navigating in the dark with no headlamps and just totally hammered.
Just faded on horse
milk.
milk.
But I mean, that was
just have you tried it?
Oh, I did, yeah.
Is it like good?
It's not good. It's certainly not good your first time drinking it, but like I was there with a college friend cycling, and then I think we both acquired a taste for it, like just as something super nutritional. It's really low alcohol, but I like it. If you can drink kefir, I think you could drink it. It's like a really, really funky kefir, you know.
Do you drink and bike a decent amount?
No. Like I don't drink like very much at all on tour. You know, it's the rare occasion. But
yeah, I mean, I just asked because we had plenty of fun times together.
No, I mean, there have been a couple special times. Like I was in the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, actually with the same friend I was with in Kyrgyzstan, and Bolivia has these really cheap, just like what's this called? Like a pint, just a little pint of alcohol, of 500 or something. I don't know. No, not that, but it's just a little pint of alcohol. And we were biking onto the Salar de Uyuni, like the biggest salar in the world, and it was sunset. And I had snuck like the previous day and just bought 2 of these little bottles of alcohol, and then at sunset on Salar, like surprised him with it, like in this amazing place, and just had a little bit of some terrible liquor, and cycling out on this giant flat white place just like that. So that was something special. But normally, like if you want to drink and like get up the next day and ride, like you're not going to do it. After doing it once, you're not going to do it again.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure you weren't like riding through like Kazakhstan with like a bottle of fermented milk with you and just.
I mean, we did, but because there you can go like just to a little yurt in the middle of nowhere, and they'll have like the fermented horse milk, so you can fill it up. It's super low alcohol, so it's like not actually going to get you drunk. And I have no idea how those horsemen actually got drunk on this stuff, but like you can
It
drink
sounds like
it, and
something
it's
out
kind
of
of
like Lord of the Rings, dude. Like it's
Yeah.
just a very weird thing to be approached by two horsemen in the middle of the night, and God, yeah, and like you have no communication there. They've been drinking. I mean, that's just a shitty situation to be in.
oh, it like I don't know if you could tell, but I just like talking about it right now. Like I get really tense. Like it's so stressful. Like because what if they like step your bike's on its side? So if one of those horse hooves goes like through your wheel, okay, then you're done. How are you getting out of there? Okay, if they break your tent, sure you can still sleep out in the open, but it's going to suck. You know?
All that's your livelihood. Like you,
It's your house.
yeah,
You know?
it's crazy. So I got a decent Karl Kroll story.
Let's see.
It shouldn't be anything bad or anything, but for people that don't know you, like you are a funny guy. Like you have always had a really good sense of humor, and our mutual friend Mark McKee is the same way. And you guys were like sort of partners in crime a lot of the time.
I was thinking today you have to have him on the podcast talk about slacklining. But
Yeah. He might be the funniest fucking person I know. He is so goddamn funny, and like I wish that he did comedy because he would be incredible at it. But I definitely like I need to do a couple pods next time I'm back in Minnesota and just get some of the homies on. But so Mark and I both played drums, and we were in drumline, and every year we had to do this stupid picture with the marching band, and they would send us out onto like the bleachers out on the track, and like our high school was at a high school. It was like this huge, like 4,000 kids. There were tons of people there. They had a huge football field and like all this stuff, and they made us wear for the picture like these marching outfits, and they were horrible. Like we all looked like Smurfs, you know, like it was just white shoes and ridiculous hat and all this. And Mark and I really didn't like being in it. It was just like we liked playing drums, and he was able to find an extra outfit and gave it to Karl, and we wanted to sneak Karl into the picture. So there's like, I don't know, it was what, 200 people or something that were supposed to be in this picture. And everybody's lined up, and Karl sits down like he's lined up to be in it, and he wasn't sitting with us because he didn't have an instrument. You were like,
I sat with the trumpet.
yeah,
Because I played trumpet in middle school. That was the reasoning.
and like you didn't.
Oh man.
So you didn't have an instrument, and I don't think you weren't really friends with anybody that was like in that group, right? Like you were just trying to stand there and like blend in.
I was friends with you guys, and I remember marching, like, because you guys kind of like were all in a line, like getting out there, like it was organized, like this is marching band or something like that. And here I am, like trying to blend in, like.
And you didn't have an instrument in your hand, so like you just were walking with us, and then we all line up, and you know who the conductor or whatever his title is, like he's lining everybody up, and he's trying to get everybody in frame, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, he turns, and he's like, You're not in the marching band. Get out of here. And like he somehow spotted you amongst like 200 people. And the funniest thing was like you had to stand up in front of like 200 people. Everybody was like, what? And Mark and I were just dying laughing. And then it was like a quarter of a mile back into the building. So we watched you like slowly walk in the marching outfit, like dressed up like a Smurf, and you had to like walk in front of us for like it was like a 5-minute walk in front of everybody. It was such a great walk of shame, but
it was so close to happening too.
I
That would
know.
have been so great.
It would have been so great that you just got it. Like, but you guys were always. I mean, I wanted to keep things relatively clean coming on here because I know you got an audience and stuff, but yeah, it just when I have him on, I'll have to have you back on. We'll tell some, wilder things, but
Sure, that sounds fun.
I guess we got a little bit more time if you want to tell that other story you got, just the on the kindness of human beings.
Okay. Can I tell one more about? Can I tell a really quick one, and then the kindness of human beings? One
Sure.
more.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. So because we talked about like never having bad encounters with humans, but when I was in, and normally they're not bad, or the worst case, you just have to get away from somebody. If they're just not going to stop bothering you. But in Hungary, I was biking and I set up my tent in like this really rural area between a couple of farmers' fields. And then the next morning I hear a pickup truck just driving down this little lane between a couple of fields. I thought, okay, great. Like maybe they'll see me, maybe they won't. My tent at the time was green, so I thought I might blend into the tall grass enough. And then it stops just like 10 yards from my tent, and I'm like, great, like this sucks. Like, or maybe it won't be bad, but like, shoot, I didn't need to have an interaction with somebody, especially if it's an angry farmer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I unzip my tent, and it's just this guy there with a gun pointed at me. And I was like, oh wow, like didn't like not the best thing to like open up your tent to. But long story short, he wanted to see Hungarian is not something you're just going to pick up quickly. And I figured out he wanted
You
to see
understood
my
the gun part, though.
I understood the gun part. Like, yeah. But he wanted to see my passport for some reason. And I realized, well, if I give this guy my passport and he takes off, then I'm totally screwed. So I didn't want to give him my passport, yet he still had a gun and wasn't happy with me. And I looked pretty scraggly after like close to a month of biking at that point. And what I ended up doing is just giving him my Minnesota ID and just saying like USA, like I'm from the USA, like, and it says Minnesota on it, and he probably doesn't know what Minnesota is. But eventually, like, it was okay. Like he left me and gave me back my ID, but just one of those situations where it's like a little bit sketchy, like anytime a gun's pointed at you. But.
Yeah, no, I don't think that still hasn't happened to me, at least recently, or that I remember. I'm hoping it stays that way.
Sure. All right. So, okay, now on to the good of humanity.
Okay.
Like one of my favorite experiences, bikepacking. And this happened while I was in Peru, and I was doing this route called the Peru Divide, which is just a crazy route going through really rural Peru. And I biked like off of this ridge, there's multiple passes on that route, which are 5,000 meters. So that's over 16,000 feet. And for a week straight, I'd been snowed on every single day in the mountains. And I was descending off this pass because sleeping on the top of a pass is like really, I mean, it is an option, but it's not a great option. So I was descending in the dark. I get to this small little town, and like nobody's there, but I knock on some doors, and this is just in a little valley. So if I'm going to camp anywhere flat, I'm going to have to camp like in this town on some ground that was made flat. There isn't an option to go on this ridge and find a flat spot to camp. Go into this town, knock on some doors. A local lady and her kids like open up this little store for me, and so I could buy some food. That was like great. Like, okay, now I have some food. These little kids were super curious about what I was doing, just talking to them, and just I don't know, instant, like really nice, hospitable people, like opening a little store for me in the night, in the dark, like just a random guy on a bike who shows up. I asked them where I could camp, and they said, okay, you can camp just here in this little plaza. And I decided against camping in the plaza, and I decided to just go a little bit further out of town. And then I came across this little school, and I thought, okay, great, maybe I can camp in the schoolyard. So I go to the school because you don't just want to camp in the school's yard and have people wake up and see you there.
Yeah.
So I asked for permission to not surprise anybody. And I asked them if I can camp there, and this lady who must have been cleaning up went and got she helped clean. She was also the cook for the school, all sorts of things. She went and got a teacher and asked the teacher, and the teacher said, oh, you may camp in the school, or you may like sleep in the school. So okay, now I'm sleeping in the school, and it's a really small school, and this town is just absolutely tiny. So I go into the school, and there are kids in the school, and it's nighttime, and I'm super confused. Like, why are there kids at school? It's dark out. And what ended up being the case was that these kids are from like surrounding houses, but they live so far away. Like their houses are so far away that they live at school during the week. So I was staying at this school full of kids, and it ended up being like, of course, like a guy on a bike from the U.S. shows up. They're all super curious.
It's an attraction.
Yeah, something to do. And so, like, rather than get rest, which it was what I wanted to do, I was just that tired. Like, I ended up hanging out with all these little kids at the school, and they, like, teaching them, like, English when they spoke. Like, they would teach me Quechua, like the local language, and then with Spanish. So we were translating like English, Spanish, and Quechua, like with these little kids, which was just so fun. Like, and they were super curious about learning English. And then I was folding paper airplanes like, for these kids, and they were all like somebody must have discovered how to fold paper airplanes because that was their thing to do. And so just doing that with these kids, but it was just such a wonderful experience with them. And then the next morning, the teacher, like after that night, like invited me to have breakfast with all these little kids at the school. And so here I am, like giant next to these tiny little kids having breakfast in the middle of nowhere. And I snuck off that morning and went to that tienda and bought them all cookies. And instantly the teacher, like the kids had cookies with breakfast, and it was just a super, super wonderful experience. And then on top of it, I left the town in the morning, and I had gone like a kilometer or two downhill, like just cruising on my bike, just thinking, man, what a wonderful experience. And then I had my headphones on, and then I hear some little kids screaming behind me, and these kids had ran after me with a note from their teacher that says please come back to our town again soon, and like signed by their teacher and with the town name. Like it said, don't forget us, please come back to the town soon. And it's just like,
that's so rad, dude.
How magical. Like I don't know. Like, and you can't just like create that. It just has to happen. Yeah. But
it reminds me of when I was at Purdue, I did a week in Colombia for this it was a study abroad trip, but it was sort of it was part of the nursing program. So we went into all these hospitals and gave kids dude, each student brought 2 full bags of clothes, like anything we could get
Uh,
at the dollar store, glasses, supplies, napkin, like anything you could pack in a bag. And we brought it down there, and like we were basically just dispensing supplies to people, and the level of like gratitude that they had for that. And granted, like at this point in my life, dude, I was drunk all the time. Like I was not, I don't want to make myself into a saint, but like there were some sobering moments where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like I'm experiencing this incredible stuff, and like I'm just so hungover right now. But it to see, like, I guess I'm kind of trashing my own story here, but to see the level of like just how much that is meaningful to those people, and you look at in comparison to like how much time people spend arguing about dumb shit in the U.S., you're like, man, it's wild, but
and like what's really important, you know? Ah, yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's crazy.
sounds like a great experience, man.
Yeah, well, it was it was
No,
good.
but no, but it's really nice. Like when you even just like the smallest little things, like I mean, when you start giving or like opening up to people in need or stuff like that. I mean, it it's really moving to yourself, you know?
It's very real. Like it
Yeah.
is. There's nothing like that. Like it's hard to like kind of capture something like that in a bottle, you know, and like remember how intense that experience was. But like there, there's not much like it. But
Yeah, not at all.
I had a bonus question for you before we go. Uh, what is the longest you've gone without showering or shaving due to bike packing?
The shave, I mean, shaving, I I trim my beard in South America, but I mean, I certainly never shaved it.
Dude, it's
So,
it's looking full Amish right now.
yeah.
Like it is
It
fierce.
now, I mean, now being back for a while
Let
and
me
being
actually
around like normal life, it might get trimmed down a little bit,
let me get a picture of
but
this before we close this out, just so that let's see. Gotta get the full beard going. There we go. That's solid. Um,
so shaving was over a year. I mean, between beard trims, probably 6 months. You know, just not even touching it, like just it getting really, really bad. Uh, I mean, the same went for a haircut. Like, I just got my hair cut. I haven't had my hair cut this short in a long time. But, man, in South America, I got my hair was so long. I had this giant long beard. I looked like Jesus. Like,
do you
just
do you
Jesus on a
just
bike.
rock deodorant, or is you just you're you man like do you just have like a cloud of Carl sent to you, or what? How does it work?
After a while, you just start smelling good. um, you know,
Because
if
you've
I
always
know
been
I'm going,
popular with women. Like you have never had an issue
it's
getting
just a
girls.
natural
And
aurora.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the pheromones.
Uh, yeah, yeah. You don't want to get rid of them with some deodorant. If I'm like going to be in a place where I'm going to be staying with locals, I will carry some sort of deodorant. Like in South America, I found some really cool tube stuff that was you could pack it really small, but I can't carry. I'm not going to carry a big stick of deodorant, so I carry just this tiny little tube. And if I was going to stay with somebody, I would like try to clean up a little bit, maybe go to a find a bathroom and give myself like a little quick shower before, you know. Uh, but yeah, I don't carry deodorant normally, and it's probably pretty rank. I mean, I know it's rank because I've traveled with people, and if they don't have deodorant, they start smelling rank too. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess you get
and
kind of accustomed to it, though, right?
and when you're on a bike, I mean, by yourself, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you ever listen to this podcast on your bike?
I have, yeah.
Hell yeah.
No,
I was
it's
curious
awesome.
about that.
Yeah, no, totally.
I'm stoked that you came on, man. Before you go, can you just say one more time for everybody where can people find you on Instagram and on YouTube, and also your Patreon stuff if they want to subscribe to that?
Sure. So my name is Karl Kroll, Karl with a K, and I can be found on YouTube at Karl Kroll and on Patreon at Karl Kroll. And then my Instagram is where underscore is underscore Karl. So where is Karl on Instagram. So
Perfect.
thank you for the plug, dude.
Yeah, anytime, man. I'm glad to have you on. We're definitely got to do another one next time we're in the same spot together. I miss you, buddy, and I'm glad
I
to
know.
see you're doing this. This is awesome.
Well, and dude, this is incredible. The podcast is super cool, and I'd love to get out to Seattle and see you do comedy. That'd be a blast.
Anytime you're out here, man, for sure. I mean, I'm gonna make you shower if you bike all the way out here. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's probably some ladies that would be interested in Crazy Karl out here, and we'll have a good time.
Sounds good, man.
Perfect, man. Let me just close by saying thanks again, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share this podcast with a friend and to rate and subscribe to us. Also, please don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FNFPod. We're going to leave you with Jaga. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. Welcome to my wave pool, my wave pool. 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 Yeah. Welcome to my pool, so